Let's talk about Galland. So, Galland, right? We already know how he works. He's been out for a while. And that's pretty much how I'm going to break down this first part. We're going to talk about his skills and how useless they actually are, or if they're useful. We'll let them slide with the useful ones. But, like, genuinely, it's going to be a very interesting way to summarize how this character works. So his passive didn't really change. All it really did was give him a gray buff of defense, which is already an L because he wants blue buffs, because they gave him an Amplify card as an LR character, which we will get into that. But he gave him a gray buff for defense, right? And then on the other end, they gave him an attack-related buff. He can get 4 of these buffs at a time. He cannot have more than 4. Oh, no, he cannot have more than 5. He has those 5 for 4 turns. That's what I meant to say. And that's cool and all, because, yeah, he gives himself a way to give himself buffs, but he also gets those buffs through demon allies. And that's cool. That's a fine part of his passive. I like that. But the problem becomes the demon allies in question. It's crazy. Like, look at the demon allies, right? These are every demon in the game. Not that many, and half of them aren't even usable in today's meta. But you're thinking about demon allies that can give Galland buffs? That makes this list even smaller. Because out of all of these demons, the only demon in relevance that gives buffs is the Demon King, and it's only one. He only gives 1 buff to the whole team. Everyone else here does not give buffs. They're all very selfish. None of them actually are support type buff characters. So Galland's the only way to get buffs with Galland. That's not very good. Now, granted, you can slide over to the boy Sigurd, right? Because Sigurd is a human, but he also classifies as a demon due to his passive, and he gives you 3 buffs on the beginning of the turn, and you might be able to get that to work, maybe, but at the end of the day, it's just a Sigurd. His CC is not that great compared to a demon team. If you replace any of the demon characters with a Sigurd, you're losing at least 5,000 CC, and that's like bare minimum. Like, it's not even worth running Sigurd at that point. So you're stuck with Galland giving himself buffs, which is fine. He is very capable of doing that himself, but it still is just something. You need more buffs out there, because the damage that he does is not that crazy. I'm gonna be honest. And that is how we get here today with the second skill, because we're gonna skip the first skill for now, because later on in this clip you'll see how the second skill or the first skill is good or bad depending on if it wants to crit. But the second skill is really good because it's a spike card, which gives you more crit damage, and it also is a bleed card. So if you counter combo it with the Demon King, you could do that, right? You can hit every crit, and it'll also do some decent damage as an AoE strat. And then if you combo it with God Melee, you can either wipe, or you can just let the bleed do the rest of the work. If you really want them to, if you want Galland to do work, and just let that happen for some reason. The bleed AoE, I like it. It's really strong. But the problem with the AoE that I saw is that it's a bleed AoE, and I thought about using him with LR Gloxinia, because if you don't know, Gloxinia, every enemy that has a bleed effect on them gets their crit chance and crit damage lowered by a lot, and it's really strong. But before we get into that part, I just want to show you this single target, by the way, the level 2, it crit. Usually it does not do this much damage, but if you manage to crit with that thing, it does this. Boom, 196. And it's type disadvantage. Really good, strong single target if it crits, but it doesn't have the time, because you need someone with lower crit resistance or someone that can lower crit resistance. It just doesn't happen that often. But yeah, the thing about Gloxinia, he doesn't work with Galland. Galland only works with demon allies. He does not work with demon allies and commandments. So the LR Gloxinia and Galland strat that I was gonna try doesn't work. Because yes, the bleed effects go for Gloxinia regardless, but Gloxinia, when he uses a skill, does not give Galland buffs. So that comp of lowering their crit chance and crit damage by a lot, and then also being able to keep sustainable buffs with Galland, just doesn't work. So yeah, that Amplify First card, it's good on its own right, but it's not strong. And you can't use it with Esterosa either, because Esterosa removes buffs every time you use a skill. So you're by default gonna do less damage if you use Galland with an Esterosa comp. And then that's about it. That first card is just not that great. And then on the second card, it's just really strong, but it's not damage dealing. Now, as you saw, yeah, you can do the whole melee into the Demon King, or Demon King into the melee into the Galland, or however you want to do, as long as the Demon King goes first and his debuff actually procs and you don't have dodge food. You can do some good damage with him as that little 3 AoE comp and just wipe turn 1. It works, but that's not nothing new. That's not nothing that any other demon ally can't already do. It's just not new. So in the end, to wrap this all up, these are my final thoughts on Galland. Is he worth LRing? No, he's not. He's not worth it. He is not bringing anything new to the demon team. He doesn't do anything crazy that makes the demon team want to use this, per se, Galland to go crazy. He's just not doing anything for it. Now, is he worth getting if you like Galland? Of course. If you like the character, get him. If you like the way he looks, get him. I'm not your father. I'm not your papa. I'm not your mother either. But you're just going to have to bite that bullet of he's not going to perform well all the time. He's not going to be the carry of your team. He's just going to be there for cosmetics. And maybe on one good day, you might get a good crit on an attack disadvantaged person, and you might kill them in one card. That could happen, and it's not that often, but it could happen. That's all I'm going to say. And now, do you think you should like use him relatively frequently? No, not even close. But literally, let's just break it down like this. The passive is pretty much the same. And we didn't even talk about the whole coercing part, which demon allies do 50% more damage to petrified enemies. The reason I didn't talk about that is because it's never going to happen, okay? Don't even get your hopes up. You're not going to face that many Gothers, and even if you do, none of those Gothers are stupid enough to petrify themselves. Unless they're playing against a bot, then sure, you can get that off against a bot any day of the week. But a real player is not going to be dumb enough to petrify. That's just not reasonable and not even going to happen. That's why I didn't talk about that part of the passive. If y'all thought I was like missing out on a certain spot. But literally, that's about it. The first card, we already talked about it. The Amplify is good when it wants to be, and it's bad when it wants to be too. The Spike Bleed AoE is really interesting. I can see potential in that card. But if it doesn't work with Gloxinia, it's borderline useless. Because that's the first thing I thought when I was reading that card. Bleed. Gloxinia, comp, crazy. Because Gloxinia has a single target bleed. You don't want single targets in this day and age. They're not that great. And especially Gloxinia's. His single target is useless. But if it were to work with Galland, and Galland were to work with Commandment allies, that would have been such a good comp, because Galland would have had 50% defense-related stats for like the entire game. Because Gloxinia gives you 30% defense-related stats just for existing. And then Galland gives himself 20%. You know how good that would have been? They would have actually made LR Glocks, which when he came out and now in current meta, he's useless. And now Galland is right there with him. But if they would have came together, that would have been a nasty comp. But no, they fumbled the bag on both of them. And now we're here. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about Galland. Is he good? I'll give him like a 7, maybe a 6 out of 10. He's good when he wants to be, and he's not that great most of the time. That's how I'm going to end it. So be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below, and tell me how y'all feel about Galland. Let me know if I'm tripping, because just from what I've experienced, I'm not a fan. But he looks cool. That's all I'm gonna give it. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Be sure to like, subscribe. I know I already said that, but listen, I need those subs, okay? And I'll see you on the next video. Peace, and have a wonderful day. Yeah.